Welcome to Truth Be Told. This is Tony Sweet. I'm here with Captain Ron, your host. We have a great show for you tonight. We have author, radio host, and filmmaker L.A. Marzulli with us tonight. He has over 12 books, including the Nephilim trilogy, which made the CBA best-selling list. He has lectured all over the world on the subject of UFO, the Nephilim, and ancient prophetic text. Marzulli has launched a series called The Watchmen Chronicles, and his independent film was released in March of 2017. Title of the series, Their Own Words, UFOs Are Real. So please welcome to Truth Be Told, L.A. Marzulli. There he is, sir. How you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on. Really good to be here.
This is awesome. We are so excited, and I know Captain Ron and I have been looking forward all week to you being here with us, so I know it's going to be a great discussion. And I know Ron had a topic right off the bat that he was really curious about. So, Ron,
well,
Captain Ron,
I've
go
been
ahead.
reading a lot lately about the DNA testing of these Piraka Skulls, and I know you've been right at the forefront of that. You want to maybe delve into that for us?
Unmute my mic. Yes, absolutely. In 2013, I took a team of people down to Piraka, Peru. And what piqued my interest and the reason why we launched that team, Brian Forrester had a series of videos, which I saw and just went, you've got to be kidding me. So we mounted an expedition. It was our first time down there in 2013. Brian was a gracious host and toured us around and showed us some of the sites, and it was incredible. But there we were, and this is a replica. We were looking at these guys. We were looking at these very enigmatic Piraka skulls, and we were wondering, what's the deal here? There are basically two schools of thought. The prevailing thought throughout academia is that all of these skulls have been cranial deformed as the result of cranial deformation when they bind the head and they shape it. And we're not disputing that. Some of these heads were cradle headboarded, but here's the deal: not all of them were, in our opinion. And we think after 5 long years of research that there's what we're looking at is our genetic anomalies, which are endemic to this particular race of beings, whatever they were. You'll notice here there is no cranial suture. There should be these are sutures right here. This is a suture. There should be a suture which goes from the frontal plate, which is right there, and it goes all the way back like this to the rear plate. There should be a suture. It's not there. Now, the skeptics will tell us immediately, well, there's a disease, cranial synostosis, which closes the sagittal suture, and I understand that. And we know that that's also, a reality. I get it. But this skull, based on the dentition, is about 26 years old, roughly.
Wow. 26
to 28 years old. Cranial deformation happens much later in life. The closing of a sagittal suture happens much later in life, usually. Could this be the result of cranial synostosis? Sure it could. So fast, we're saying that there is a abundance of skulls in Piraka and absence of a cranial suture. Why seeing that over and over and over again with these Piraka skulls? But there are anomalies, and this is the work of Rick Woodward. This is called the foramen magnum, right here, right there, right. This hole right here, and there it is, right there. That's the foramen magnum, right where this hole is. You'll notice how far back to the rear of the skull it is.
Mm-hmm.
So when we pointed that out, when our anthropologist Rick Woodward pointed that out, immediately people said, well, that's the result of cranial deformation. And we're saying, no, it's not. That, how many studies have really been done on this? Not many. And ours, we feel, is the leading edge, the tip of the spear, as it were, in regards to this. But there's other anomalies here. You can see right here, these are called the foramen condyles, and I'll hold that still right there. These are all wrong. They're in the wrong place. They're very robust. Plus, the foramen magnum on this particular skull is much smaller and a different shape than a normal human skull. And these skulls have something which is actually lacking. They do not have something called the foramen ovales. The foramen ovales are these two holes, basically all the way in the back of your neck, where your nerve endings and blood vessels come through and they animate our face. They enable us to smile or grimace or whatever. That's what, all because of the foramen ovales. Now we've got Rick Woodward, our anthropologist. We have Dr. Michael Alday, medical doctor for over 40 years, 37 years. We've got Dr. Warren Malcolm, a chiropractor. All these guys have examined these skulls, casts of these skulls, and they've come on the record, and that is basically in this book. Basically the final results of the DNA. And what we're looking at here, and I'll just show you another picture. And you can see for yourself kind of what I'm talking about here with the foramen ovales and the foramen magnum. This skull right here is a human skull. Look at where the foramen magnum is.
Right.
And now look to the other skulls. Completely different position, different shape, different position. What we're saying is that this is genetic, that something is going on, and people need to look at this. It's genetic. These people no longer are in existence down in Piraka, Peru. They basically just vanish about 2,000 years ago. The DNA evidence showed that many of the haplogroups, which is the mitochondria, the female part of the equation, cover line, maternal line, plus the groups, the origin of these people are Middle Eastern and European. Now, all of them, we take samples. Out of the 58 DNA samples we took, 28 of them came back, and some of them were B, and B is Asian, which is what we would expect from or Indian. But some of them came back European, Middle Eastern. And
that alone is amazing, right, LA? Because we wouldn't have expected that in South America, right?
You shouldn't see that.
Especially at that time.
Now, you might see a trace of it, but the bottom line is, I mean, these haplogroups, there was enough data from the DNA that showed us that what we were looking at was, in fact, good source material, and that the haplogroups are Middle Eastern and European. So I love the naysayers immediately jump on the bandwagon and say contamination. We use stringent protocols. It's all on film. Stringent protocols that were set in place from the main lab that we use, the Paleo DNA lab. They sent us over 50 lab suits, which are completely, you walk into these things, you zip them up. They've got 2 arm sleeves, 2 rubber gloves, a hat, a mask, feet. I mean, the whole deal. Chase Klotsky, our forensic field investigator, was down there. She sterilized the room. She had packets of sterilized paper, which she put down on the table after she wiped it clean. Through everything you can possibly do, in the field. And we were at the Ica Museum. So this was the real deal. So the people, look, it's some 2014 or 15. Okay, that was the first time we went down. We took some samples, their hair sample. Even then, hair is being taken this and immediately tagged them back. Immediately. Contamination, I get it. At what point do we say we're not looking at contamination anymore? Certainly the sample we did in 2016, 2017 from Piraka and from museum with stringent protocols. I gotta look at that. That's where we're going. You can't, in my opinion, you can't do it unless a sterile room with which is the intake of air, basically. But we're out of the field. We're at the eco. They don't have any of that, and they won't let the skulls. So we enacted a very strict protocol from a lab. In fact, one of the geneticists complimented us, the fact that the protocols that were in place. So the bottom line is, look, we're looking at here. These are the nephilim. We have no idea what they are. All we're stating is, one, there needs to be genetic anomalies, morphological differences in the skulls, which seem to be genetic, which result of cradle headboarding. 2, the placement of the foramen magnum, the placement of the foramen ovales, the lack of foramen ovales, the way the foramen condyles are, the lack of a sagittal suture are pointing to, in our opinion, genetic influences, not the result of cradle headboarding. And then you've got the mitochondrial DNA, which is showing a European / Middle Eastern origin. This rewrites history.
Right.
And you would think, instead of these people, coming down, oh, it can't possibly be, it's all creative. Look at the data, for crying out loud. Look, the data, all 8 people wrote in the book. We've got myself, Chase Klotsky, Richard Shaw, Dr. Malcolm Warren, Dr. Michael Alday, Rick Woodward, Malo Gonzalez, and Brian Forrester. All of us came in on this. And then we've got the DVD. We've got the DVD, which is almost 3 hours long. This is of the press conference. So everybody presented. So when you get these two, we also throw in yeah, exactly. You get the Mark of the Beast, which is where we're actually taking out an implant from a guy who's been abducted, which is just fascinating. I'm lecturing on that. I think people will find that.
Is that the Patient 17 with Roger Lear?
Yeah, he stole our stuff, with all due respect. Yeah, I mean, he was there. We gave him footage. He was supposed to credit us. He never did. That's how the game is played, folks. And now he's on Netflix with Patient 17. We paid for that. We paid for the surgery. And we were reluctant in allowing another camera guy in, but out of courtesy to Roger, we did. Out of courtesy to Roger, we allowed the guy footage, and he was supposed to credit us, and of course he never did. You can hear my voice in the film.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. You can hear my voice in the film, and I'm not credited. We paid for it, and we did the whole deal, and this guy steals our stuff, makes his own film, and then now it's on Netflix.
Wow.
Calling you out, Jeremy. Calling you out, pal.
I love it.
You're a weasel.
So you're not. The thing is, we're not saying this is necessarily alien or anything. It's just showing some anomalies. That's all. That's why people get too crazy about this. Let's take a look at it.
And look, we're not saying they're Nephilim or alien or anything. All we're saying is, you know what? Based on 5 years of research, and we've got our archaeologist, Malo Gonzalez, our anthropologist, Rick Woodward, Dr. Michael Alday, Dr. Malcolm Warren, rather. I always give you 2 first names, right? But the bottom line is, we're saying more research needs to be done. We need to get the other side of the equation, which would be the nuclear DNA. And we're desperately trying to get that. We need a lot of genetic material in order to actually get the nuclear DNA. And the nuclear DNA will give us the other side of the equation. And if that comes back unknown primate, there's nothing in the gen banks, it looks like human, but there's anomalies in it, now we're off to the races. And even then we don't know what we're looking at.
Right.
We don't know. I mean, we can't go back in time. Did these people come from the Middle East? In my opinion, they did. They could have gone transatlantic or trans-Pacific migration, which may have taken hundreds of years. Thor Heyerdahl proved, and it's in the book, Thor Heyerdahl proved that you could build a papyrus, a reed boat, sail across the Atlantic Ocean, you'd wind up in Barbados.
Now, you said you think they came from the Middle East. Has there been elongated skulls found in the Middle East, and have you tested the two to see if they're related at all?
No, we have not. And you got to remember, it took us from 2013 to 2018 to get to this point, and lots of money. Because people go, "Oh, this information should be free." Oh, okay. So when next time I have to fly to Peru, I'll go up to the airplane and say, we're in a very important mission here, and can you give us 4 seats for free? How does that sound?
Yeah, we'll see how that works out.
Yeah, and the same thing with the DNA lab. I mean, we spent tens of thousands of dollars testing all this stuff at different labs. And
isn't it true, LA? There's only a couple in the world that can even study these ancient skulls, right? There's 10 or something.
There's a handful. We are using the Paleo DNA lab in Canada, and these guys are great. They're just incredible. Stephen and Renee Faprietro, they've done a stellar job. And like I said, we've got a line on some artifacts, which we're trying to, work something out with, and get DNA samples from those and get those back up to the lab. The prize is the nuclear DNA. And as of yet, we've not been able to get it. And again, just to reiterate, even if we have that, let's say it comes back unknown primate. Like, History Channel showed on their In Search of the Lost Giants, which I was on the season finale for, they showed that there's this new subspecies of human beings called Denisovans, based on one tooth. and a little bit of bone fragment. So they go, well, it's a new species, but they have no idea what these things look like, and they haven't found any more. We know that elongated skulls are found all over the world. Mm-hmm. Other anthropologists need to look at the morphological differences around, specifically in and around the foramen magnum area, the foramen condyles, the foramen ovales, and weigh in on that. In other words, they need to hold Rick Woodward's feet to the fire. But the data is the data. And, Rick's a scientist. He's an anthropologist. He's not making stuff up. He's looking at these things and going, there are genetic anomalies here. And, the naysayers who aren't anthropologists will try to shuffle the stuff around, look at the data. Bring in someone to look. Don't write a hit piece on Rick Woodward. Look at the data. And tell us where the data is wrong. Right. Tell us if the foramen condyles are not what Rick Woodward says they are, or the fact that the foramen ovales are not there. Attack the data. And we welcome that. We welcome scientists, anthropologists, geneticists to look at the data and tell us where we're going wrong.
Well, what response have you got? They probably don't even want to participate, right?
No one wants to participate. The academics don't participate for two reasons. And if you don't believe me, folks, watch Ben Stein's movie Expelled. He's already done the work. I don't need to make the movie. Ben Stein's movie Expelled. It's an incredible look into what the scientific and the academic community is really like. And the subtitle of that is No Intelligence Allowed. Expelled, no intelligence allowed. Anyone in academia who even mentions the idea of intelligent design can lose their job. Even mentions it. That's intellectual fascism. That's what it is. It's intellect. You just mentioned that, the DNA is really complex. No one knows where it came from or how this combination of the DNA combines to create different things. We have no idea where it came from. But to mention the fact that it could have been created by someone, oh no, you can't say that. But no one knows where we are and what this is. But the fact that, you say, well, maybe there is a God up there and maybe he put this in place. Expelled. You just lost. You're terminated. And that's why these people are terrified to come on the record. We have one lab that won't even let us use their name because they don't want to be associated with us because it's too woo-woo. Well, why
they'll take your check.
They'll take my check. Sure they will.
Now, how do you go about taking the DNA? Because I know anything that's that old is very fragile. And how do you actually extract it?
See right here, that's myself and Mondo.
Right.
And in front of it is what we call the Oregon skull. Notice the lab suits we're in.
Right.
Rubber gloves, mask, hair nets, the whole deal. We took compressed air, blew the skull off. Then we take a Dremel tool, which has been sitting in bleach. Put that onto the end of the Dremel, lightly scrape the part of the skull. And usually it's from the foramen magnum. So we take the Dremel tool and we come in, let's say here. We come in here and lightly scrape an area. All right. Mm-hmm. Then we take more compressed air, blow that out. There's a sheet of clean paper underneath, never touched by human hands. Okay. Clean paper. we put the skull down, take the Dremel tool and go in and get fresh material from the interior of the skull. From the interior, fresh material, mm-hmm. That powder falls to the paper. It's immediately, the paper is creased in half, folded in half, and then we have a vial. I'm holding the vial. Mondo's got the paper. And we just tap the contents of the paper into that vial. I seal the vial. I hand it to Chase Klotsky. It's tagged and bagged, and that's it. I mean, you can't get any, in my opinion, unless you're in a sterile environment, a better sample. Mm-hmm. There's no contamination. Plus, we did DNA testing of myself, Mondo, and Richard Shaw. So we have all of our DNA to make sure that we're not contaminating the samples. So it's like, again, we've got the morphological differences, the structural differences in these skulls. We've got the DNA, which is pointing to European mitochondrial DNA. Guys, I mean, aren't you people in the scientific community, aren't you people interested at all? I mean, the world is flat, right, guys? Chris, don't build the boat. Don't go sailing. There's nothing there. There's dragons on the end. You're going to fall off the edge. I mean, aren't you people curious at all? I mean, I'm not a scientist, but my gosh, I look at the data that we've discovered, and my mind's blown.
Right. I want to know.
Wow. I want to know.
Right.
Right.
Isn't it true that you were talking about how? Go ahead. Just go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
No. Go. Isn't it true what?
I was going to talk about how you were something about the DNA. I forgot now. The way they pull the DNA. Oh, isn't it true that you've already repeated the results? So it's not like you have one-off, and it could be that you've repeated this multiple times.
3 times on one skull. It all comes back U2E1, which is European.
That's what I was getting at. So there you go. I mean, that's pretty definitive, right?
Yeah, and that's by 2 different labs.
Well, then that's even more definitive.
Well,
why wouldn't somebody recognize that at this point?
You can't, because it goes against the prevailing paradigm, and that's what's at stake. And that's why the pushback. That's why these people will yell and scream, and they'll attack Rick Woodward because he teaches at a community college, and somehow his degree in anthropology really doesn't count because he's a teacher at a community college.
We hear the paradigm come up a lot on this show when we talk about the age of the Sphinx, the age of the pyramids, all these things. You can't go against that paradigm that exists.
Yeah. And look, the Sphinx is more than likely 10 or 12,000 years old.
Agreed.
I'm familiar with Robert Schoch's work. The pyramids were not built by the Egyptians. They just weren't. And all Zawi Hawass and the whole crew there, all they have to tell me, let's just see the fact that they leveled the pyramid down to within like less than an inch in all those acres it's in the bedrock. They leveled all that. All the casing stones were fit perfectly. Yada yada yada. We'll give everybody all that. Just show me how you cut granite blocks 500 miles away from Aswan. That the tonnage on those things are what, 200 tons? And you move them, you cut them, and move them from Aswan down the Nile to the pyramid, and then bring them up and cover the king's chamber. Just show me that. Just show me that. And if you can't cut the granite, and you can't move it in the ancient world, then we have a real problem. And guess what? You go back, what their timeline is, they cannot cut granite. They can't cut granite. They can't move the blocks. So right off the bat, you got something that doesn't jive. But see, all this, in my opinion, and this is what's at stake, my work points back to the veracity of the supernatural. Because what I think is happening is we have been visited and are being visited by supernatural entities, which are very interested in reproducing with us. As I said earlier in the show, if we are intellectually honest, nobody knows where we are and what this is. If the United States is analogous to the universe, are we in Tampa, Florida, Dallas, Los Angeles, New York City? Nobody knows where we are in this thing, and no one knows how it got here and what we are in it. Nobody has a clue. Nobody. People will rant and rave and say this and that, and nobody has any idea of where we are in this thing. And because I'm a frank supernaturalist, I believe in the biblical prophetic narrative that God, the real one, spoke everything into existence, and which is bizarre, but that's what I think he did. And when you read scriptures that say, "I will roll the universe up like a scroll," is that figurative or is it literal? Is that
that's not scientific at all, though. You're going the other way here, LA.
It's not. No, it's not. But those are my personal core beliefs. What do I think these? If you were to ask me, LA, what do I think we're looking at here? I would tell you I think we're looking at the remnants of the Nephilim tribe, specifically the Anakim, which means long necks. Why? Because of the position of the foramen magnum, this creature would have had to have a much longer neck than a normal human being. So the Anakim get into basically my line of work, which is all on the Nephilim. The Nephilim were the progeny of fallen angels, but most people have trouble with that word, so we'll just call them nefarious interdimensional entities and the women of Earth. You see, if I say fallen angel, immediately people just go switch, click it off. But if I call them nefarious interdimensional entity, you're right there with me all day long. Right. You'll listen till the cows come home.
Just word it differently.
We're going to call them nefarious interdimensional entities. They're coming down. They're mating with the women of Earth. They're creating a hybrid being known as the Nephilim. 3,500 years ago, Joshua and Caleb are pressing the conquest of the promised land. there are numerous tribes there: the Nephilim, the Raphaim, the Zamzumim, the Emim, the Anakim. In my opinion, these names denote genetic characteristics. Could this skull be the remnants of the Anakim? It could be. I mean, that's conjecture on my part, and I'm the first to admit it. That's my core belief. I have no scientific data for that, but that's where I'm leaning towards. That's my hypothesis. Can I eventually prove that hypothesis? Don't know. Maybe. I mean, if we could find some writing in Peru, or we could find some writing intact from an unopened tomb in the Americas that would show a Phoenician origin, that would be a game changer. But we don't have anything like that as of yet.
And is there any artifacts that were found with the elongated skulls that showed any type of religion or their beliefs at that time, or no?
There's something that's called these tapestries in Piraka.
Mm-hmm.
They're called the flying men of Piraka, okay? And, it depends on who you talk to. Like if you talk to someone who thinks that all this is all warm and fuzzy, then the flying men, well, they're just a bunch of great guys that are misunderstood. The flying men of Piraka have serpents coming out of their mouth. They're entwined with serpents, always the serpent. And one of them is they hold a lot of time trophy skulls. One of them is holding a trophy skull and licking its head. So that to me is not a Winnie the Pooh type bedtime story. That's the stuff of nightmares. The serpent in New Age occult circles denotes wisdom. And I won't dispute that, but that wisdom always comes with a price. And that price, just ask any shaman, is your soul.
Right.
So yeah, you can go up and you can into the second heaven, and you can, pal around out there with a bunch of nefarious entities, and you can get downloads and get wisdom and get power, but that comes with a price. Just ask any shaman how he gets there. I interviewed a guy who was studying to be a shaman on the Navajo Indian reservation, and he told me he bailed when the initiation is you have to kill a family member, and he couldn't do it.
Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Hey, LA, let's move on a little bit to,
Sure.
we had Stephen Bassett on last week, and we were talking about disclosure, and he really thinks it's getting closer. And even that, Podesta and those guys were talking about actually formally disclosing. What are your thoughts on disclosure?
Well, we were talking about this off air, but the bottom line for me is we've already had disclosure. We had it 3 different times in December. The first one was when Fox News on prime time, Tucker Carlson tracks out this former F-18 pilot, Fravor, F-R-A-V-O-R, whatever. Fravor comes out, and he's got, which was obviously at one time classified footage of a UFO. And he states on camera, whatever this was not of this world. And Tucker Carlson goes off teleprompter and goes, this is a really big story. Why aren't we talking more about it? Bully for you, Tucker, you get it. But somehow, and this is the question that no one asks, how does Fravor get on Fox News?
Right.
Where's the link up? And
right, they never book guys like that, ever.
Ever. So the bottom line is he's being someone very high up with a lot of clout.
Mm-hmm.
Said, well, I want you to put this guy on Fox News on prime time, not the Fox News business channel, prime time with Tucker Carlson. And we've got some film. Where does Fravor get the film from? This whole thing is a managed agenda, and no one's investigating it. Where was your source? What was the producer? Who contacted you to get Fravor? Of course, you'll never get those answers, but that's what inquiring minds need to know. So that's the first thing. That's disclosure, right on Fox News, right on prime time. This is the reaction for the American people.
Nothing. That whole $23 million black budget thing went away in 3 days.
Same thing. What's his face? Harry Reid gets up and goes, Harry Reid gets up and goes, the United States government has a secret study group to study UFOs. And the guy doesn't ask the question. The interviewer doesn't. I'm sitting there pulling my hair out going, ask the question. Well, Harry, how are they studying these UFOs? Are they looking at black and white photos from the 50s? Are they investigating and back engineering stuff like Philip Corso tells us and Bob Lazar tells us? Just how are they studying UFOs, Harry? Do they get together once a week? Are there deep underground bases where they're studying UFOs? Oh, Harry, by the way, are there small grays with the big black eyes that are down in these underground bases? Is that how they're studying? Are they back engineering stuff like Bob Lazar tells us at Area 51? I mean, come on, Harry, spill the beans. The guy never asked a question.
Yeah.
Nothing. Flatline. The third one is when the United States government admits that Area 51 exists. It's just like, so you had 3 disclosures in the month of December, not a blip from the American people. Nothing, just absolute flatline. And that's why I think they realize that nobody cares. Most people are ambivalent. And, what's for dinner? That's what's for dinner?
Yeah.
And I got to pay
Even
my
before
tax.
9/11, when they had the Stephen Greer Disclosure Project, those guys, we've had a couple of those guys on, and they were up all night because they thought the world would change overnight when they disclosed this. And it was like no big deal.
Just like our Piraka DNA stuff.
Nothing.
We thought, and Jaime Maussan came up and Telemundo interviewed us, and a couple of other shows interviewed us, which was great, but nothing. It made Brian Forrester sort of preempted us, and it was in some English paper or whatever, and but no one's ringing my phone.
Well, why is this, LA? Do you think that they've got the American public or whatever, the world, to just it's so part of the culture that this is wacko stuff that nobody wants to hear it, even if we have good, credible guys coming out?
Yeah. It's like I think people are 2 things. I think people are exhausted, are worn out from information overload. I mean, really exhausted from it, and the fact that we live in an age where there's so much information out there and things can be managed so you don't know what to believe. And if it really doesn't affect me, what do I care? Is it going to pay my mortgage payment? Mm-hmm. But see, we have inquiring minds, and we're awake and we're aware and we're looking around going like, what is this? Where am I? Where am I really? I know I'm in America. I get all that, but where am I really? And what is this really? And most people never, ask those questions. They're not interested in that. They're just interested in how do I save enough money for my next toy, or,
right.
How do I put my kid through school, or, whatever. You see it. Just go down to spring break every year. It's all hedonistic. Let's get as inebriated as I possibly can, and have exchange bodily fluids with as many people as I possibly can.
That's a weekend for Tony. I understand that. Well, I'm just surprised at these things. Even the fact that $22 million, okay, forget the alien thing, forget the UFO thing. $22 million is being hidden on the UFO project. Why aren't people outraged? Hey, why are you spending money on that? Even that, nobody says anything.
Flatlined. Just flatlined. Yep.
It's just like all these stories just go right to that alternative little world and stay there, and that's it.
It just makes you wonder, why the American people. I mean, look, I speak a lot at churches and conferences, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And, there are tens and tens of thousands of churches all over America. And you would think that they'd be jumping all over this. They're not. You think my phone would be ringing off the hook. It's not. And the reason for this is that people are 2 things. They're afraid of it. They don't want to talk about it. Many people that I've interviewed over the years are even afraid. They had never even told their husband, or they never told their wife that they had an encounter because they were afraid of the ridicule. So, the MO for the last, since Roswell, has been ridicule. You're wearing your tinfoil hat, right? You're wearing your tinfoil hat if you talk about any of this stuff. So, okay, so they're trotting it out now. They trot out flavor, but nothing's really changed, and many people are still afraid to communicate or talk anything about it. At some point, and we talked about this a little earlier off the air, the next footfall, of a shoe, as it were, is going to come down. My personal feeling that what it could be is something to do with the Roswell crash in 1947. And the reason for this is most everybody knows about Roswell. There's been a lot of press on that over and over and over again. Corso's book. Dr. Stanton Friedman's book. There's just books galore about Roswell, right? I mean, we've talked about it. I've written about it, filmed it. So what if, and this is just a what if. So what if the powers that be exactly come out with, let's say, real footage of a debris field before the Air Force came in and picked it all up and moved it. So here they got the camera, and the camera's panning like this from right to left, and there's the debris field. And you've got some guy that's talking off camera saying that this is footage from the 1947 Roswell crash, which was not a weather balloon. And we've been in contact with these beings. What if that's like, see, because that would do a couple of things. That would, okay, so the phenomenon is real, number one.
Would they believe it, LA?
Well, if it's on Fox News or CNN, or it's broken on, let's say they break it on multiple news channels simultaneously, which is what they would have to do, then yeah, people would start talking about it. Even then, it's still soft disclosure. When it's really going to change is when people look up and see a mile-wide craft.
I was going to ask, what would it take? Because, back when Orson Welles in the War of the Worlds or whatever it was, everybody went crazy. If they did that now, nobody would even pay attention. So it's like, what would it take?
It's when the mile-wide craft show up and they're out there, that's the game changer. That's when everything changes. That's when now it's completely out in the open. It's no longer managed. This is it.
Right.
And the world, Richard Dolan talks about this, but the world will look at everything, AD before this, or BD before disclosure, and AD after disclosure. Title of his book, After Disclosure. And I agree with him. I have a different opinion about disclosure and who these beings are and where they're from. And I think they have a very malevolent agenda.
Well, hold on, LA, if you don't mind. That's what I'd like to ask you, if you wouldn't mind, since it's been numerous years. I'll just say that you wrote that book with the alien interviews, which was amazing, and you delved into all these different experiences of alien encounters. Since all those years, I'm sure you've covered other stories and explored other things. Where do you stand now? What do you think the alien experience is?
I think these are nefarious interdimensional entities who are obsessed with creating a hybrid being with us. They're obsessed with it. And I believe it with Dr. David Jacobs talks about that hybrids are walking among us. We had Al Matthews talk to me today, and he was talking to a woman who was abducted multiple times. She's been impregnated 9 different times. The daughter was a star child. The husband was a hybrid. Here's something. Here's the red flag to me, and it's a controversial passage of Scripture. And this is something Jesus says 2,000 years ago. He says, and I'm paraphrasing. He says, basically, when I return, it'll be like the days of Noah. Whoa! I mean, that statement is so pregnant with meaning, it's ridiculous. Well, what do you mean when you return? Where are you going, and for how long? And where are you returning from? Inquiring minds really want to know, right? What am I looking at here? But he says it'll be like the days of Noah. So that's the clue. And so the student has to go back and look and examine the days of Noah. And what we see are nefarious interdimensional entities openly mating with the women and creating a hybrid race known as the nephilim. And then you ask yourself, okay, that was thousands and thousands of years ago. Is it happening in modernity? And the short answer to that is yes, absolutely. It's happening in modernity. Hybrids are now walking among us. Those are, in my opinion, modern day Nephilim. I've never met one, but a friend of mine has. In fact, several people have. And to tell you the story, Pastor Mike is out on a beautiful June morning back in Knoxville, Tennessee, and he's doing what's called a prayer walk. He's just praying for people in his congregation. In the distance, he sees a female jogger with very striking whitish blonde hair, pulled back in a ponytail. She's tall, 6'2", 6'3", very athletic looking. And she's running towards him, and he's like bothered, but he doesn't know why. He's upset. He's not sure why. As she comes closer, their eyes meet. She has blue eyes. But as she comes much closer, the eyes shift, and go black. At this point, he starts rebuking her. As she runs by him, she bares her teeth and growls at him.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a question. I know you're pretty religious, I believe. I'm just assumption here, but I've heard many times when the UFOs, when aliens finally reveal themselves, that it's going to change the way governments and religion and it's going to make most religions fall. What is your belief on that?
Well, I've heard this since I was like 24 years old, before I became a Christian.
Right.
I had a very profound experience when I was 30, which is like a Paul on the road to Damascus experience, which was not religious at all. It was supernatural in its origins, which was life-changing. That's 37 years ago and continues to the present day. But when I was 25 years old, I remember hearing and believing that when they showed up, they would take the undesirables off the planet, so that there would be this, because the people who were being beamed up just weren't ready for this new paradigm shift. Well, at the time I didn't know, but there's prophecies written in the biblical prophetic narrative, which talk about this very thing. Behold, I tell you a mystery, we shall not all die, but at the last trumpet, those of us who are dead in Messiah will rise, and then those who are alive, right, will rise up, be just taken off the earth, right? And that's a crazy scripture, and meet the Lord in the clouds. That's the craziest thing I've ever heard of in my whole life. I mean, that is just absolutely nutso, right? Yet it's there in scripture. And this is what I'm saying. If we're intellectually honest, we don't know what this is. All we know is that when these nefarious interdimensional beings show up, they manipulate space, time, matter, and energy in ways that human beings can't. We all agree on that. When a gray comes in and you're abducted, you're paralyzed, you're levitating, and you're going through the window. We all believe that. Those of us who have traveled in this, looked at it, talked to abductees, written about it, researched it for decades now. We know that this is true. How do you go through a closed window? You can't do that. But they can, because they're manipulating space, time, matter, and energy. How do you make a right angle turn in a ship doing 50,000 miles an hour?
Right.
Well, you can't do that. They do all day long.
Well, like Jacob says, they're clandestine by design. They choose to do that. If they wanted to reveal themselves, they could.
Yeah. And why? I mean, I spoke at a MUFON meeting a while back, and I looked at the audience and I said, is there anyone in this room who thinks that it's okay to abduct a 5-year-old boy against his parents' wishes and perform sexual experimentation on him? Anybody in the room think that's a good thing? Raise your hand. Not a hand went up. Not one. And I said, good, we're all on the same agenda. We're all on the same team here. We all agree that this isn't a good thing, that whoever these entities are shouldn't be doing what they're doing. Don't take my 5-year-old, if I have anything to say about it.
Right.
So, it's amazing. There's something called the Stockholm Syndrome, where you go through something dramatic often enough, traumatic rather, and you begin to side with your captors, which is very prevalent with abductees. Some of the abductees I've talked to, they'll just check the brain at the door and go, well, these beings have other agendas. They're so far above us, yada, yada, yada. And I'm going, no, not buying it. Why not give us the cure to cancer? Why not do something benevolent? Why do you have to continue to mutilate cows year after year after year? Do horrible things to them. I mean, if you really cared, you would just dump the cow in the ocean so no one would ever see it, right?
Exactly.
No, you drop it back in the farmer's field to freak everybody out. That's what you guys do. Why is it when we're abducted, you find the longest needle you possibly can and show it to me like, hey, guess where I'm going to stick this? And you stick it up the man's penis. Hello. I mean, it's deliberate. It's absolutely deliberate. They know what they're doing.
Yeah, I've always thought that was kind of weird that they would bring a person or a animal back to the place where they picked it up. I was like, what's the point? So that makes total sense.
It's just like leaving the skulls and dead people to scare others. It's a calling card, right, LA? They're putting it out there on purpose.
It's a calling card. It's exactly. But it's not warm, fuzzy Winnie the Pooh stuff.
Right.
It's not. I mean, these guys have a nefarious agenda. I believe it's a highly malevolent one. and it's one that we should be alarmed with. When they show up, they'll have technology. They'll have the same technology that powers the craft. They'll give that to mankind. They'll also have a small little implant, which they'll basically say that this is a DNA upgrade, and that's what the hybrid who was talking to Al Matthews was telling him, that it's almost time for the upgrade. The upgrade is coming, and that's what I think the upgrade is. And you'll take this little microchip, this little. It's not a microchip. It's like, it looks like a BB, about the size of a grain of rice. We took this out with Dr. Roger Lear. We talked about that. And you'll take that and it will change your DNA. And when it changes your DNA, you will no longer be a human being as we know it today.
So when do you think this is coming? Is this coming in our lifetime? Is this coming quick?
Yeah, I think we're on the cusp.
Wow.
We're on the cusp of it. And I think it's sooner than later. I really do. It's like everything's accelerating towards this one point. And I think we're really, really close.
Well, we have about 3 minutes left. I can't believe it's already went this far. But what can people do? I mean, is there anything that we can do as human beings to even stop this this transition, this DNA upgrade, or do we just have to just wait for it to happen?
What was written will come to pass. What was foretold is unfolding right now in modernity. What was written thousands of years ago in the biblical prophetic literature is now coming to pass. What was foretold thousands of years ago in the biblical prophetic literature is unfolding. So you have to do this. You got to take what I think the church is, take the church hat off, put it on the side, take a flamethrower and blow that thing to smithereens. Then go back and start examining what the prophetic literature talks about. And it paints a picture exactly where we are today, in my opinion.
Wow.
And so we are in a galactic cosmic war. We're in a cosmic war, and this war is ramping up to its fulfillment. That's where we are, in my opinion.
Hey, Ellie, I know we're running out of time, but you want to just talk real quick about Fatima? I know that's your latest thing. You want to just throw that real quick so we know?
You guys are going to have to have me come back.
Oh, you'll be back.
The film is done. Fatima 1 is out. You can go to my Vimeo channel, L.A. Marzulli, and look at it, or you can just buy it if you want the hard copy of a DVD. You can go to lamarzulli.net and order it. Groundbreaking material. Fatima 2. If Fatima 2 is just, I sit here, guys, honestly, and I'm blown away by what we have in Fatima 2.
Really?
Yeah, I am. And we're publishing a book from semenologist Jose Machado, who had access to the original glass plates that were taken in 1917 by a photographer called Benolio.
Wow. He
He was there on the moors of Fatima. He took 12 photos during the so-called miracle of the sun. We have access to those, some of those, and it's printed in the book that we're publishing. And it's really the coup de grace in Fatima 2. The skeptic will always go, well, what we found there, in my opinion, shows without any doubt at all in my mind that what appeared in Fatima was not the sun. It was, in fact, a dull silver disc.
Wow.
Yeah.
Pretty awesome.
It is. I'm blown away. I'm blown away by what we have in Fatima 2.
Cool.
Well, we had a great time. We hope you did too. And
I did, guys. I have to come back and do it again.
Oh, that was great. No, you definitely will be back. And please go to his website, L.A. Marzulli, and that's Zulli at the end of Mar. And so make sure you guys go and support and then pick up his book, DNA Results, and then DVD and book. And you can get the, Alien Implant Removal and the Mark of the Beast DVD and book. So I think that's a great gift for you and your spouse. Go ahead and buy it. All right, so this is Truth Be Told. We had a great time. I hope you guys did too. Thank you guys for tuning in every week with us. And I'm Tony Sweet. We have what's your name again?
My name will be Captain Ron.
Oh, that's right. Easily forgotten. So until next time, we'll see you next time on Truth Be Told.